Hello and welcome to this special author chat for the SFF Spotlight event. It's happening on the 29th of September at the Nerdy Cafe in Shrewsbury. I am your host, Frasier Armitage, part-time robot, full-time nerd, author of New Yesterday and Time's Ellipse. And joining me today is an epic fantasy author. He's absolutely brilliant. His latest book is awesome. It is Steven McKinnon. Steven, nice to meet you. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you for that introduction. I'm doing well. It's good to see you. Glad we managed to organise this, get chatting, talking about the event that's coming up. All very, very exciting stuff.
Yeah, it is really exciting. What aspects of it are you looking forward to the most, do you think?
Probably meeting some authors that I've been Facebook friends with for a good few years now, but never had the pleasure of meeting in person, such as Holly, Philip as well. Have you met Phil yet? Oh God, there's a
Yeah, we
couple of
did an
Phils.
interview with Phil, yeah.
Yeah, well, we're good to see those guys. Yeah, exciting stuff. Other than that, I'm looking forward to just being in the venue chatting to like-minded people. I think with a name like the Nerdy Cafe, it's going to be good. They're going to have a lot of stuff in common for self-declared nerds such as us. I'm keen to go get chatting, just be in amongst it all. I should probably prepare what I'm going to say at the panel as well, but I'm taking the approach that I'll be speaking at a panel. That's like one part of the whole thing. The rest of it, I'll be there as a fan as well. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be so much fun. And like getting to chill out with nerds is the best kind of chill out time you can have, right? It's like there's no better group of people to hang out with than someone who you can throw nerdy questions at and get nerdy answers back, right?
Yeah, that's it. I think kind of making friends and stuff like that peaked in like primary school when you ask somebody, "What's your favorite dinosaur or your favorite color?" Ideal. When things got more complicated than that, I think that's when society lost its way. So yeah, chuck us in a room full of people that like the same stuff, then that's it. It's made. What more do you want?
I have a very soft spot for the stegosaurus, just officially for the record. It's I love it. I love the steg.
I'm a
What about you? What's
triceratops
your favorite
fan, I
dinosaur, Stephen?
think. Might need to edit that. I think it is. Yeah, I'm a triceratops man. It's something I've given a good.
Yeah, everybody. It's the three horns, right? There's just something about the three that just is so good. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, spot on.
So in terms of your panel that you said that you're going to be on, what is the topic going to be that you of your panel?
We'll be discussing finding your next great read within the kind of indie fantasy sci-fi spectrum. So I've not spoken to my other panelists yet, but I will soon. So I mean, I'm taking the approach that I'm not going to talk about my own book. I think that might be very self-serving. I don't know what the other guys are thinking. Maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot there. But yeah, I mean, spoiler alert, but the main thrust of what I'm going to talk about, I think, is just engaging with the community. And that's probably quite a cliche answer, but it's so true. Because the kind of genres that we write in, they tend to inspire really passionate fan bases. So word of mouth is always going to be the biggest advertiser that you've got. Is going to be the kind of biggest or the best praise you're going to get is from fellow authors and readers of the genre passing it on, which is true for a lot of things. So that's kind of what got me into the indie side of publishing anyway, because with traditional publishing, you write a book, it might be a couple of years before you get an agent, it might be a couple of years before it gets picked up, and then you need to make changes, so on and so forth, which is great. There's room for both indie and trad publishing, but with indie publishing, there are fewer barriers between reader and author. So I mean, I've got a few people in my mailing list that will just email me every once in a while just to check in. They might have picked up one of my books, enjoyed it, then just chatted away. There was one in particular who's got a very similar name to me. I think his name is Steven McKinnon, and he said that he discovered my books just because he Googled himself, Steven McKinnon, author, and it was me that came up like one before him on the search results. So he fired me an email. So every now and then we'll message each other. We're into the same like music. Like I'm a huge Iron Maiden fan. So is he. So he sent me a picture of like at the time his new adopted son with an Iron Maiden t-shirt and just chatting away. So it's just these connections that kind of sprang out of nowhere, all because you wrote a story, you put it out there, people responded to it. So that's what's good about indie publishing in general, and it's how to find your next great read. Just go on the Reddit threads, go on the Facebook groups, on Twitter, just see authors interact with each other. And it's probably more effective than straight up marketing where you've maybe got a few Facebook ads for a cold audience and, oh, please buy my book. Whereas readers that see you engage with authors that they're already fans of, they might just take a chance on your book anyway, find that they like it, then become fans for life. Or not. I mean, they're allowed to not like it as well, which is just as useful. I mean, I've always said that like a 2-star review can be more beneficial than a 5-star review on Amazon, because things that a reader sets out that they don't enjoy, another reader might filter through the negative reviews, read that and say, you know what, none of that stuff bothers me. In fact, I like 30-page action scenes. That's well up my street. I'm going to buy this book. So yeah, sorry, go off on a bit of a tangent.
So you got into the indie scene because of you being connected with others and because of all of that. And I love that Steve McKinnon sharing the name story. I think that's absolutely hilarious. That's absolutely brilliant. For anybody who's coming, don't get the Stephen McKinnons mixed up. You know, this is Stephen McKinnon, author of Order of the Shadow Dragon. But what I want to know is what appealed to you about fantasy in general, you know, because obviously getting into indie publishing and going through the communities is one thing, but what speaks to your heart when it comes to fantasy and, you know, as a genre itself?
I really love the idea of just building my own world. I like taking all the stuff that I like from the real world, shoving it into a blender with bits and pieces from like maybe a local culture, maybe if I've been on holiday somewhere and saw a cool bit of architecture, read up about it, I'm like, yeah, this is going to be part of the city. How does this work in like a semi-modern society? Like the first fantasy series I've got, there's technology like airships and firearms and stuff like that, but there's like the armies and a lot of the city watch still use swords and stuff like that. So I liked the idea of writing about a world that's on this kind of precipice from the old leaning into the new. And what does that look like? Also, like cities that are just a melting pot of different cultures, where one of the refrains from that fantasy series, The Raincatcher's Ballad, is, oh, if you don't belong anywhere, you belong here. So people are quite patriotic about the city they live in, but admitting that it's also like a bit of a shithole as well, but it's their shithole. So they get to take pride in it. And certainly coming from Glasgow, that's our kind of humour as well. Like we love to sing praises about the good stuff, but we'll happily wear the rough stuff as a badge of honour as well. I don't know if that's entirely healthy, but it's something that we all do. So when it comes to fantasy, it's like, yeah, I love all that stuff, all that kind of different, like people from different walks of life, different cultures, then just shove magic and monsters into the mix as well, and just see how that affects things. Yeah, so have you seen the movie Casablanca?
Oh yeah, it's a classic, right?
Yeah, love it. So that movie and the kind of city it portrays was probably the biggest influence on the main setting from that initial fantasy series, because everything, there's law and order from the kind of the German Nazi side with the local side, there's resistance, there's humour, there's romance in the film, it's all of that. So yeah, just that huge melting pot, I should say, of shady characters that are more often the good guys, and then you've got the folk kicking about in the uniforms, looking for law and order and stamping out all the illegal activity, who are in fact the bad guys. So that's an always fun dynamic to write about.
Yeah, that's awesome. So was that like the origins for the Order of the Shadow Dragon, or is that the origins of your like initial books, or sort of because the Order of the Shadow Dragon's your latest, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So that was the kind of starting point from the previous series, and Order of the Shadow Dragon takes place in the same world but a different setting. So it's a place that we've heard mentioned before but didn't visit in the original trilogy. So yeah, it's a bit more of a kind of classic feeling fantasy. It's more of a almost like a Dungeons and Dragons, sitting around a table, your mates bantering whilst going on adventures. Which is kind of a palate cleanser for me. Like I wrote it for myself first and foremost, because I wanted something that was like a bit shorter. It's about 85,000 words compared to the 160, 170,000 words of the previous book. So I wanted something that you just were thrown into the deep end straight away, then let the adventure take you. And also wanted something that was a bit more obviously fantasy as well. So it's no coincidence that the front cover has a guy in a cloak with a sword and a dragon in the distance. So it's a bit more, it's a bit easier to identify as fantasy when you look at it compared to the other books that are maybe kind of fantasy with a bit of sci-fi and stuff like that, a bit of steampunk, a bit of horror as well. So yeah, it was just something. Yeah, I wanted to get it out of my system. I wanted to write something a bit more focused. There's only 3 kind of point of view characters in Order of the Shadow Dragon versus the maybe 6 or 7 of the previous ones. And something I didn't do before that I've done with this one was each chapter is told from like a single character's point of view. Before the chapters I'd had maybe it was maybe dictated by geography. This is this area's story with these 3 characters. The next chapter would have been somewhere else with a different bunch of characters. So it was kind of a challenge for me to spend a bit more time in each character's head at any given moment. So it was good. I felt it was like flexing the writing muscle a bit. So I think I improved as a writer as I was doing it. And it was just good fun. As of this recording, it's still in the current SPFBO competition. I think the group that it's in, they're about to select the semi-finalists today, I think, maybe tomorrow. So by the time this video goes out, I might not be there anymore, but we'll see.
Oh, all the best. Yeah, I know that you've been in SPFBO before, right? And you did really well. So yeah, what was your experience with that?
Yeah, really, really good. So yeah, Symphony of the Wind, which I didn't have my copy. I didn't prep this in advance, by the way, just I don't look like that. So yeah, that's so you can see it as a big chunky kind of piece. Yeah, so that was my debut fantasy book. So I entered SPFPO not long after it came out, or it was scheduled to come out before the deadline for SPFBO. And yeah, like just a nervous wreck when I hit that send button. So like, I don't know if people are going to like this, people might hate it. But my rationale was that might be the case regardless of whether it was in a competition or not. So I thought, well, it's either going to sink or it's going to swim regardless. So chuck it in, let's see what happens. And like so much of it was based on luck, I think, because you're randomly allocated 1 out of 10 judging groups. It so happened that the one I was allocated to, they loved and they put it forward as their finalist, but it could just as easily have been a DNF after 10% had it gone to another judge. So it was miraculous that it got as far as it did. But that being said, and kind of tying into what I said earlier, the biggest benefit of SPFBO is just meeting other authors and readers and bloggers as well. Because it was from that first competition that I met the guys that we're meeting in Shrewsbury and a few other authors as well. And everyone's just kept in touch since. So it is like a massive family that technically you're in competition with, but you like to see them succeed as well. Like from the day we were born, there was always more books than any one person could ever read. So, celebrate your pure success, I think. And that's SPFBO kind of really carries that philosophy, I think. So, yeah, great fun. I mean, not every judge, not every blog enjoyed it, but that's the same for any book. So I think maybe 3/4 of the judges really enjoyed mine. A couple didn't, wasn't their cup of tea, but yeah, it was good. I was really excited that I had another book eligible for this competition. So it's been good reading the reviews and just seeing how everyone's doing with it. Yeah.
Yeah, congrats. No, that's brilliant. And I love what you say about the idea that, you love seeing people succeed, because one author's success is all of our success, isn't it? Because it's keeping the genre that we love alive. And that's partly why this event is so exciting, isn't it? Because it's a chance to be able to come together to think about what we love, to talk about what we love, and also to meet people who are sort of cheerleading these stories, it's and to do that in real life. There's nothing that quite compares with that, is there?
No, agreed. No, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, maybe kind of bigger authors than me, they go to these things and they've probably done a million of them. But I'm really looking forward to just seeing how it works behind the scenes, as well as talking to people and talking to other authors. God bless Holly, like she's managed to organise it like from the get-go. I don't know how she's managed to stay sane. But yeah, so yeah, it'll be good to meet people. I've been Holly's previous SPFBO entry just now, actually, which is really good. So again, that was in my Amazon basket before I'd even spoke to Holly about this event. So it is a really kind of small, tight-knit community. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and the fact that people get to come along and to experience that, and it's a very inclusive community, and that's the beautiful thing about fantasy and sci-fi and horror and all of these different things. There's such a inclusivity, and there's such a like what you said earlier about understanding the subjective nature of the genre. Nobody takes things personally if you attend and you don't like a story that someone's written. It's not like it's everyone is just happy to be there because we all love the same sorts of things, right? So yeah, I love that that's your like origin story into fantasy is via Casablanca. That's like I've never ever met somebody.
Ruins, yeah,
Yeah.
Casablanca.
Never met somebody who was like, of all the interviews that you had to mention that in, you had to mention it in mine. It's like, yeah. No, so tell me a little bit about the sequel, because you've got the sequel to the Order of the Shadow Dragon that you're working on now, right?
Yeah, that's right. So that's called In the Shadow of the Black Flag, and as its name kind of indicates, there will be pirates in it in this one. So that's a corner of the world I'm looking forward to explore. For plot reasons, the world that I kind of mentioned earlier that had this industry, the kind of technological advancements have kind of halted, so the world's looking back the way. It's like, well, airships were very common and now they're not. So we're going back to kind of sea travel, and a lot of that's it's an interesting dynamic because there are parts of the world that have never kind of embraced the technological kind of leaps the world was making, and they've kept their traditional modes of transport and levels of technology. So it means people or individuals or societies that were kind of looked down upon and were maybe thought of as weaker, they hold all the trump cards now. So the world's looking to them to see how they adapted and kept alive. So yeah, it happened, or it takes place maybe a few weeks after the end of book one. So same group of characters, maybe I have one or two more point of view chapters there from kind of side characters in the previous book. Getting into scrapes and adventures. Yeah, so in fact, earlier this morning I was writing the first big kind of battle So I don't want to give too much away, but if it's half as fun to read as it is to write, then yeah, it'll be good fun.
Fantasy Pirates is ticking all the boxes, Stephen. That's just like, mwah, I love it. Um, tell me a little bit about sort of, the idea of being when you invent a world that is a fantasy world, wanting to explore more of it, because you know I think when you're writing certain types of genre, you might be able to do a standalone here and a standalone there and a standalone there. But when you write in fantasy, the world that you create is so rich that you want to spend as much time as possible in that world, right? As you kind of been trapped by your world a little bit as a fantasy author because it's too much fun.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Just now, I'm still at the point where I'm excited to explore. So there are a few kind of countries, continents, and nations that are mentioned, and then but it's like your own world. Like there's a bunch of places you've never heard of, but they're still there. So I'm not worried that one day somebody that read one of the older books will read a newer one and it'll be set in a place they've never heard of. I don't think that's enough to break the immersion or anything like that. I do have, so I don't have a map or anything like that, but I've got like spreadsheets where I've got the continents, the countries, the capital cities of those countries, places we've visited before, and a bunch of stuff we've never seen yet. So for me, for a reader, it might seem like I'm writing a book in this new location, this new city, but it's been in the back of my head for years. I've just not had cause to whip it out yet. So it's good to just like, let's go here for a change. Let's do this. What new, or to be honest, anytime I start a new book, I start with a theme. So not necessarily anything too heavy handed, but just a kind of general framework that all the ideas fit within. Um, so if I get stuck with a bit of world building or a bit of plot, I take it back to the theme, and often that'll dictate what should happen. So while I've got all these notes and spreadsheets, a lot of the time making it up as you go along is the best bet as well. Things will pop up. Your characters will be walking down a mountain path, then you'll think of something that you weren't necessarily conscious of. Then, like, well, that's cool to write about. That's fun. That might be a cool set piece. Let's put that in the mix and see what we get out. So just now, yeah, I'm still very much enjoying working within that world. I'm not quite bored of it yet.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think as well, writing a series is so helpful when you're self-publishing and when you're indie, because it means that if somebody finds one book in that series, then they're going to be able to find more. And I think it's a really, really cool thing. Whereas I think the books that I've written so far have been a little bit more standalone. And it's strange how that seems to work as well. But have you found that there's been a real advantage to you personally, writing in a series when it comes to self-publishing?
Yeah, but probably more to do with my own sanity. So I don't want to for this new book. It's like, well, I've got the framework there. I'll just kind of use the template that I've had before. Like I'm familiar with a lot of the culture and the cities and stuff that I've made. But you never know. I mean, I might get an idea next week for a story, the theme of which might dictate it takes place somewhere completely new. So, yeah, in terms of maybe the more kind of practical, the marketing side, yeah, having a series definitely helps. I think it helps with the visibility. Because I know that there's some readers out there that don't read standalones for whatever reason, or some that say they'll only start book one if the series is already finished, which isn't my mode of thinking. But I guess like there's plenty of series out there that are finished, so yeah, you've got your choice if that's how you kind of choose to kind of look at new books and find new stuff to read. Yeah, go for it. I don't know if it's just maybe they've waited too long on book 2, 3, 4, or 5 coming out. But I think, well, if I'm going to invest my time, it has to be a complete story A to B. So I can understand that as well. Yeah, but I'm more attracted to series, I think. But like I'm a big fan of Joe Abercrombie, and he's got a few different series within the same world, and that's the kind of approach that I like to take as well. So I've read maybe 5 or 6 of his books, and like they're all really good. But again, not averse to standalone new worlds, standalone new characters. A good story is a good story.
Yeah, that's brilliant, and that's definitely a good name to have in your back pocket for your panel as well. Which is, Joe's awesome.
Yeah.
In terms of you can say, you're allowed to say it, Stephen. It's George R.R. Martin's fault. You know, he should have finished the series. He's put everybody off starting series that aren't finished. It's you can blame George.
Okay, sorry, George, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like every game has an ending, right? So if it's Game of Thrones, it's at some point it's got to end. But yeah.
You would think. I mean, then again, if you've ever played Monopoly, sometimes you're there 2 weeks later, growing a beard, still playing. Like, how are you not bankrupt yet? Yeah.
That's true. That's true. A lot of crossover I see in Game of Thrones and Monopoly. Lots of, they should definitely do that version of it, shouldn't they? Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. So yeah, in terms of the event, you've got your panel, you'll be there in person, which would be absolutely awesome. So for anybody who comes along, will you have copies of your books with you as well?
Yeah, I've got a few copies of Order of the Shadow Dragon. I'd be more than happy to sign, is what I'd meant to say. So I'm going to have that. And I'd spoken to Holly right when I'd kind of volunteered to join this event. It is my intention to bring like maybe a cup and 2 dice, and anyone that rolls like 2 sixes can just get a book for free. I want to get involved in the kind of board game vibe of the venue. I think that might be quite a cool thing to do. I mean, maybe if every person that wants to buy one of our books ends up rolling 2 sixes, I might like come away like maybe that wasn't the best idea. Maybe it should have been me. But yeah, I was in a cafe once, and that's what they did. They said, well, you'd order your coffee, and before you pay, they say, right, roll the dice, and if you get 2 sixes, your coffee's for free. I thought, oh, that's a great gimmick. That's got me coming back to this coffee shop. Never ever managed it, but I've spent a lot of money there, and one day I'm going to win.
You've just got to make sure that you add the caveat that you only get so many rolls, because otherwise it's like you just be there all day waiting until you get the 2 sixes. Yeah, no, I love that idea. I think it's awesome. If you brought like a D20 as well, and it was the chances of rolling a 20, that would be that's the height of nerdery, isn't it? Like roll a D20, get a book. That's amazing. So it'll be absolutely great to see you there, Stephen. Thank you so much for spending some time with me and chatting about fantasy and chatting about your books and about what you're looking forward to for the event. For anybody who's enjoyed our conversation and they want to get in touch with you or they want to ask questions before the event itself, where can people find you?
So I'm on Twitter, or X as it's allegedly known now. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, just at Steven McKinnon Author. That's the Instagram and Facebook, and at SHR McKinnon is Twitter or X. Because I'd always thought SHR McKinnon, that sounds like quite an authorial name. That's my middle names. But the non-fiction book that I put out before writing fantasy was under Steven McKinnon, so I wanted everything on the one page. So that's what. Maybe I'll have a pen name or something, or cause to create a pen name and use that. But yes, I'm on all the various social media as well. I do have a TikTok that I've never ever posted to, so maybe leave that just now.
I'm the same. I'm like, I've got to get into book talk, and then I have no idea what to post. So if anybody who is watching this, come find us at the event and teach us about book talk. It'd be great. But yeah, thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you on the 29th of September at the Nerdy Cafe in Shrewsbury.
Thanks for having me. Cheers for you. Take care, okay?